In the heart of an African village lived a poor orphan girl mistreated by her own stepmother. Yet in her pain, she carried kindness, humility, and forgiveness. When the prince chose her above noble maidens, jealousy and danger rose against her, but her courage and mercy turned enemies into family, and an orphan into a queen. This is not just a love story. It is a lesson for every family. Pride destroys, but forgiveness heals. The sun rose gently over the village of Katora, its golden light spreading across the clay huts and dusty paths. The morning was alive with the cries of roosters, the laughter of children, and the smell of firewood smoke curling from kitchens. But in one corner of the village, behind a broken fence and a house that always seemed too quiet, lived a girl named Anna. Anna was no ordinary girl. She was an orphan, her father long gone to the grave, and her mother resting in the cold earth before she could even speak. Left in the care of her stepmother, Mrs. Grace, Anna's life was filled not with love, but with pain. Every morning, she was the first to rise and the last to sleep, her hands always rough with farm work, her feet bare from walking miles to fetch water. Yet even in her suffering, Anna carried a beauty and gentleness that could not be hidden. Her stepmother, however, saw her as nothing more than a servant. While Grace's own daughters wore clean dresses and walked freely in the market, Anna wore torn cloth and ate only what was left after everyone else was satisfied. To the neighbors, Anna was just that poor girl, but inside her heart, she dreamed of a better life, one where she was loved, respected, and free. One morning, while Anna balanced a heavy clay pot of water on her head, the sound of drums filled the air. The whole village stirred with excitement. News had spread like wildfire. Prince Edward, the only son of the king, was visiting Katora for the first time. His father wanted him to know the people he would one day rule. Children ran, women prepared food, and men swept the streets clean. For the villagers, this was more than a visit. It was honor. Anna watched from afar, wishing she could join in the celebration, but her stepmother's voice cut through her thoughts like a whip. "Anna, stop standing there like a useless stick. Go and wash the clothes by the river before the sun burns your skin, and don't you dare show your face at the gathering." Anna lowered her eyes and obeyed. She knew better than to argue. Carrying the basket of dirty clothes, she walked quietly to the river. Yet fate had a surprise waiting. By the riverside, Anna bent low, scrubbing the garments on a stone. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and though her clothes were ragged, her reflection showed the grace of a girl whose beauty could not be destroyed by suffering. It was at that very moment that Prince Edward, riding on horseback with his guards, passed by. His eyes caught the sight of Anna by the river. He slowed his horse. Something in him stirred. She was not like the other girls he had seen in the village, dressed in bright colors and shouting for his attention. This girl was quiet, hidden, yet her presence was brighter than all the others. "Who is that?" Edward asked one of his guards. The guard shrugged. "Just a poor girl, my prince." No one important. But Edward's gaze lingered. For reasons he could not explain, the image of Anna, bent by the river, would not leave his heart. Anna, unaware of the prince's eyes on her, lifted the basket of wet clothes and walked back home. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. That night, as the village celebrated the prince's arrival with drums and dance, Anna sat alone outside her stepmother's house, staring at the stars. She whispered to herself, "One day, maybe, life will be different." And in the palace tent, not far away, The prince whispered his own words. Who was that girl by the river? Two whispers in the night, bound by fate. The next morning, the drums of celebration still echoed in the village of Katora. The people spoke with excitement about the prince's visit. Women praised his handsome looks, men admired his courage, and children boasted that they had seen him ride his white horse. But while the village laughed and sang, Prince Edward's mind was elsewhere. He sat in the shade of a large tree near the king's tent, staring at the busy market road. His heart carried the memory of the girl by the river, her quietness, her simple beauty, her tired eyes that spoke more than words. She was no ordinary villager. She was different. I must know who she is, he murmured. Ignoring the noise of the feast, Edward asked one of his trusted guards, "Go to the river. Ask around. Find out about the girl I saw yesterday." The guard nodded and left quickly. Meanwhile, in the small clay house at the edge of the village, Anna was on her knees, scrubbing the floor with a rag. Her stepmother, Grace, sat in the doorway, fanning herself, while her two daughters, Mary and Clara, painted their nails with dye made from crushed leaves. "Anna," Grace barked, "did you hear the prince looked at the market girls yesterday? They say he might choose one of them to be his wife. But you don't even dream of stepping outside. If I see you anywhere near the palace grounds, I'll make you regret being born." "Yes, stepmother," Anna replied softly. But in her heart, Anna felt no jealousy. Marriage to a prince was a dream too far for someone like her. What she wanted was simple: kindness, freedom, peace. By noon, the guard returned to the prince. He bowed low. "My lord, I asked about the girl. Some say she is called Anna. They say she is an orphan living with a cruel stepmother. Most people hardly notice her." The prince's eyes lit up. "Anna," he repeated, as though the name itself carried music. "Prepare the horses. Tonight we shall ride quietly. I must see her again with my own eyes that evening." While the village prepared another night of drumming and dancing, Grace gave Anna a small piece of stale bread and ordered her to fetch firewood from the forest. Anna tied the bundle of sticks to her back and walked through the darkening path. The forest whispered with crickets, and the moon rose slowly in the sky. As Anna bent to gather more sticks, she heard the sound of hooves behind her. Frightened, she froze. Out of the shadows came Prince Edward, his white horse gleaming in the moonlight, his eyes fixed on her. Anna gasped and dropped the wood. She bowed low. "My lord?" she whispered. "Do not be afraid," Edward said gently. He dismounted and stepped closer. "I saw you yesterday at the river. Tell me your name." She hesitated, her voice trembling. "Anna, my prince." Edward smiled. "Anna, why do you work alone in the forest at this hour? Where is your family?" "My parents are gone," she said softly. "I live with my stepmother. She keeps me busy with chores." The prince saw the pain in her eyes, and his heart stirred with anger at her suffering. Yet he also saw strength, a quiet dignity that no cruelty could erase. Before he could say more, the sound of footsteps rustled through the forest. Anna panicked. "I must go. If my stepmother finds me talking to you, she will beat me." Edward reached for her hand, but she pulled away and ran into the shadows, leaving the bundle of firewood behind. The prince stood still, his hand empty, but his heart full of determination. "I will not let her suffer in silence," he vowed. That same night, Grace's youngest daughter, Clara, secretly followed Anna into the forest and saw everything. Her eyes widened as she watched the prince speak to her stepsister. She rushed home and whispered the news into her mother's ear. Grace's face darkened like a storm. So, the orphan dares to steal the prince's attention? Not while I live. Her plan was simple: keep Anna hidden, broken and forgotten. But fate had other ideas. The morning after Anna's secret meeting in the forest, the village of KADIRI woke to new rumors. Whispers moved through the market like the wind. The prince was seen walking near the river. He is searching for someone. Not one of the proud maidens, but a quiet girl. Grace heard the gossip while buying food. Her face tightened with anger. She knew exactly who the villagers spoke about. Her heart burned with jealousy, not because she loved Anna, but because she feared losing control over her. If Anna rose to greatness, who would sweep the floors? Who would carry the water? And worse, who would obey her every command? That night, Grace gathered her daughters, Mary and Clara, in the dim firelight. "Listen carefully," she hissed. "The prince must never find Anna. She is nothing but a servant, and she will remain that way. If she dares to step into the light, our family will be shamed. From this day, you will watch her closely. Lock her in if you must. She belongs in the shadows." The daughters nodded, though Clara's eyes held doubt. She had seen how gently the prince spoke to Anna. Something about it felt pure, different from the harshness she knew at home. Meanwhile, in the royal tent, Prince Edward sat with his closest advisor. "My lord," the advisor warned, "the king expects you to look among the noble families for a wife. To choose a poor orphan would anger many." Edward's jaw tightened. "I do not care for riches or noble blood." I saw truth in Anna's eyes. A heart like hers is worth more than all the gold in the kingdom. He stood, his decision firm. "Prepare a gathering tomorrow. I will invite every maiden of KADIRI. Anna will not be hidden from me." When Grace heard about the prince's gathering, panic filled her heart. She rushed home and shouted at Anna, "You will not go. Do you hear me? Stay inside this house and scrub every corner until your knees bleed." "But," Anna began. "Silence!" Grace struck the table with her hand. "If you disobey me, you will regret it." Tears filled Anna's eyes. She longed to see the prince again, but the heavy chains of fear bound her spirit. The day of the gathering came. Drums echoed, colorful cloths decorated the village square, and maidens danced proudly before the prince. Grace's daughters, Mary and Clara, wore bright dresses and walked confidently into the crowd, each hoping to catch the prince's eye. But Edward's gaze moved past them all. His heart searched for only one face. "Where is she?" he whispered under his breath. Back at home, Anna sat by the window, hearing the distant drums. Her heart ached like a bird trapped in a cage. She whispered to herself, "If only I had wings." Suddenly, Clara slipped back into the house, her face troubled. She looked at Anna and then at the locked door. For the first time, pity stirred in her heart. She whispered, "Anna, do you want to go?" Anna's eyes widened. "But Mother said—" "Forget what she said. If you don't go, you may never see him again." Clara's voice shook, torn between loyalty to her mother and the truth she had seen in the forest. She reached for the key hanging on the wall and pressed it into Anna's hand. "Go." Quickly, Anna stared in disbelief. Hope, sharp and bright, rushed through her heart. And at that very moment, in the village square, Prince Edward raised his hand and declared, "I will not leave until I find the girl by the river. My future lies with her, not with riches, not with pride." The drums fell silent. The crowd gasped. Grace froze, her face pale with fury. And somewhere in the shadows, Anna stepped out into the light. The village square was alive with color. Drums thundered, women clapped, and maidens twirled in bright cloths, their voices rising like birds in the evening air. But despite the laughter and music, Prince Edward's eyes searched only for one face, the girl he had seen by the river and in the forest. Grace pushed her two daughters forward. Mary walked proudly, swaying her hips, while Clara followed more quietly, her eyes filled with secrets she could not speak. Grace whispered sharply, "Smile. Show him your beauty. One of you must win his heart." But Edward barely noticed. His heart grew restless. "Where is Anna?" he thought. Far away, Anna walked nervously down the dusty path toward the square. Clara's key still clutched in her hand. She wore the only dress she owned, old and faded, patched many times but clean. Her hair was tied simply, her feet bare, her heart pounding. As she neared the gathering, the music slowed. Whispers ran through the crowd. Heads turned. The poor orphan had come. Grace's eyes widened in horror. "No," she gasped. She pushed through the crowd to block Anna's way, her voice sharp as a blade. "Where do you think you're going, you useless child? Go back to the shadows where you belong." The crowd fell silent. But before Anna could answer, Prince Edward stood from his seat. His voice rang clear. "Let her come forward." The villagers gasped. Grace froze, her face red with shame and fury. Anna's steps were slow but steady as she walked toward the prince. The crowd parted like water before her. She felt every eye on her, but her gaze stayed low, her hands trembling. When she finally stood before Edward, he smiled. "So we meet again, Anna of Katora." Her heart leapt. You remember me?" she whispered. "How could I forget?" Edward said. He turned to the crowd. "This is the one I saw by the river, the one whose heart is pure. She is the one I choose." The square erupted in shock. Some cheered, some murmured in disbelief, and Grace shrieked, "No, she is nothing but an orphan. She is not worthy of a prince." But Edward's eyes were steady. Worth is not measured by wealth, nor by pride. True worth lies in the heart, and Anna's heart shines brighter than gold. Grace lunged forward, grabbing Anna's arm. "She will not go with you," she screamed. The crowd gasped, but then, to everyone's surprise, Clara stepped forward. Her voice shook, but it carried truth. "Mother, enough. I saw how the prince looked at Anna in the forest. I saw how kindly he spoke to her. She deserves this chance. Let her go." Grace's face twisted with rage at her daughter's betrayal. But the villagers began to murmur, their voices rising. Some nodded in agreement. Others clapped for Clara's courage. The drums began again, this time louder, stronger, as if the village itself was choosing sides. Edward took Anna's hand gently. "No one will harm you again," he whispered. And as the music rose, Anna's eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of hope. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. The drums of Katora still echoed in the night as Prince Edward and Anna walked together through the village square. Villagers clapped and sang, some in joy, others in disbelief. For the first time in her life, Anna felt the warmth of acceptance. But the glow of that moment did not last long. At dawn, a messenger from the palace arrived, bowing deeply before Edward. "My prince, the king demands your presence at once. He has heard of your choice." Edward's heart grew heavy. He knew this moment would come. He turned to Anna. "Do not be afraid. I will fight for you." The royal palace stood tall and proud. its carved wooden gates painted in gold, its courtyards filled with guards and nobles. Inside, King Richard sat on his throne, his face stern, his crown gleaming in the morning light. Beside him stood the Queen, silent, her eyes curious but calm. When Edward entered, the king's voice thundered. "Is it true, my son, that you rejected the maidens of noble blood and chose a poor orphan girl instead?" Edward bowed slightly, his voice steady. "It is true, father. I have chosen Anna, daughter of no wealth, but rich in spirit." The hall filled with gasps. The nobles whispered angrily. One of them, a proud lord, stepped forward. "My king, this cannot be allowed. How can a servant's child sit on the throne beside your son? She will bring shame to the crown." But Edward raised his head. What brings shame is pride without compassion. Anna has suffered more than any of us, yet she carries herself with grace. That is the kind of queen our people need. The king's eyes narrowed. "Enough. I will not have my son's heart ruled by foolishness. You will marry from a noble house, and that is final." Edward's chest tightened, but he refused to bow. "With respect, father, my heart is not a matter of command. I will not forsake Anna." The king's face darkened. "Then you defy me?" "Yes," Edward said firmly. "If love is defiance, then I defy you." Back in Katora, Grace raged inside her hut. Her daughters sat quietly as she paced the floor. "That foolish prince has brought shame on us all," she cried. "Choosing an orphan over noble maidens? It cannot stand." Mary asked timidly, "But mother, what can you do?" The prince has already chosen. Grace's eyes gleamed with cruelty. "Then the girl must fall before she ever wears a crown. I will not let Anna rise above me. I will break her once and for all." Her words were like venom, and the fire in her heart burned hotter than ever. That night, Anna sat by the window of the small clay hut, staring at the stars. She felt torn between fear and hope. She whispered softly to herself, "Can love truly fight against kings and cruelty? Or will I lose everything before it begins?" Far away in the palace, Edward stared at the same stars. His heart carried the same question, but his answer was firm. "I will not give up on her." The war between love and power had only just begun. The next morning, the palace square filled with nobles, chiefs, and curious villagers. Word had spread quickly. The king would test the orphan girl whom the prince had chosen. Some came to mock, others to see if the whispers of her beauty and kindness were true. Anna stood nervously at the edge of the courtyard, her heart pounding. She wore the same patched dress, her hair tied back, simply. She felt small beneath the stares of the nobles dressed in silks and jewels. But by her side stood Prince Edward, his hand firm in hers. King Richard rose from his golden chair. His voice boomed across the courtyard. "Today we will see if this girl is worthy to stand beside my son. Let her prove herself, not with beauty, for beauty fades, but with wisdom and character. If she fails, she will leave this palace forever." The crowd murmured. Anna's knees trembled. Edward leaned close and whispered, "Do not fear. Speak from your heart." The king called her forward. "Anna," he said, "if you are to be queen, answer this. What is greater, wealth, power, or love?" The courtyard grew silent. Everyone leaned closer. Anna raised her eyes, her voice gentle but clear. "Wealth can be stolen. Power can be broken. But love, true love, gives life even to the poorest, and strength even to the weakest. Love is greater, for it lasts beyond death. Gasps filled the air. Some nobles frowned, others nodded slowly. The queen's lips curved into a small smile. The king's eyes narrowed, but he pressed on. "And what would you do, Anna, if given the throne?" "What is the duty of a queen?" Anna bowed her head briefly, then answered, "A queen is not above her people. She is their servant. To lead is not to command, but to care. If I were queen, I would open my hands to the poor, for I was once poor. I would speak for the weak, for I was once weak. That is the duty of a queen." The silence that followed was deep. Then slowly, applause began, first from the villagers, then from some of the chiefs. Even those who doubted her felt the truth in her words. Edward's heart swelled with pride. But Grace, hidden at the back of the crowd, clenched her fists. Her face burned with rage. "No," she whispered to herself, "she will not win. She cannot win." When the gathering ended, the king said nothing, but his expression was heavy with thought. He had expected her to stumble, to reveal foolishness. Instead, she had spoken with wisdom beyond her years. The queen turned to him softly. "Did you hear her heart, my king?" Perhaps the boy is not wrong, but the king only shook his head. "I will not decide yet. She will face more trials. If she truly has the strength to be queen, it will show that evening." Back in the village, Grace began her plan. She gathered Mary and Clara in the dark of their hut. A wicked smile crossed her lips. If words cannot break her, then shame will. "At the next gathering, I will expose her. The people will turn against her, and the prince will have no choice but to let her go." Mary looked eager, but Clara's heart sank. She remembered how Anna's voice trembled in truth, and how the crowd had begun to respect her. A war of loyalty stirred in her chest, but Grace's mind was already turning with venom. "Yes," she whispered, "Anna will regret ever stepping out of the shadows." The royal drums beat once more, calling the people to the palace courtyard. Another trial was announced. The king's voice rang out firmly. "Wisdom, she has spoken." But a queen must also show humility and honesty. "Today, we will test her character." The crowd buzzed with curiosity. Some believed Anna would pass again. Others hoped she would fail and return to her lowly place. Anna stood before the throne, her heart pounding, while Prince Edward remained at her side. Grace, hidden in the crowd, watched with eyes like fire. Her plan was ready. The king turned to Anna. "Here is the task. Before you lies a basket filled with gold and jewels. Take what you wish. But remember, what a queen chooses speaks louder than her words." The guards placed the heavy basket before her. The jewels sparkled in the sunlight, dazzling everyone. Gasps rose from the crowd. Anna bent slowly, her hands hovering over the basket. For a moment, silence ruled the air. Everyone waited. Would she take more than she should? Would greed reveal her true heart? Suddenly, a loud voice pierced the air. Grace had slipped forward, her face twisted with false anger. She pointed at Anna and shouted, "My king, do not trust this girl. She is a thief. Many times she has stolen from my house when I gave her food and shelter. I raised her from nothing, yet she repays me with lies and theft." The courtyard erupted in shock. People turned and whispered, "A thief? Could it be true?" Anna froze, her eyes wide with hurt. Tears welled up, but she shook her head. "It is not true. I never stole anything. I was treated as less than a servant, but I never dishonored myself." Grace pressed on, her voice sharp as knives. "Lies! I am her stepmother. I know her better than anyone. If she can steal from me, what will she do to the crown?" The crowd murmured louder. Doubt spread like smoke. Edward stepped forward, his voice fierce. "Enough! Do not slander her with lies." But the king raised his hand, silencing the courtyard. His eyes were grave as he looked at Anna. "If these words are false, then prove them false. What will you take from the basket before us? Choose wisely, Anna. The eyes of the kingdom are upon you." Anna's heart pounded. She stared at the jewels glittering like temptation, then lifted her head. With steady hands, she reached into the basket. The crowd leaned closer. Grace smiled cruelly, waiting for her to grab fistfuls of treasure and prove her words true. But when Anna stood, her hands were empty, except for a single coin of gold. She placed it back before the king and bowed deeply. "My king, I desire nothing. I am rich in the love I have found and the life God has given me. If I take this coin, it will not add to my worth. If I leave it, I lose nothing. What I carry in my heart is enough." The courtyard fell silent. Then the crowd erupted in cheers. "She is honest. She is humble. She is not greedy." Edward smiled with pride, his heart swelling. Even the queen clapped softly, her eyes shining. Grace's smile vanished. Her plan had failed. But King Richard remained silent, his face unreadable. That night, Grace returned to her hut, trembling with rage. She slammed her hand against the wall. "Twice she has escaped, but I will not rest. If I must destroy her with my own hands, then so be it." Mary watched with fear. Clara lowered her eyes, her heart torn deeper than ever. And in the palace, Anna lay awake, whispering into the night, "Why does her hatred never end? When will I finally be free?" The palace courtyard grew restless. The people of Katora were divided. Some now admired Anna, others still doubted her. The king, watching carefully, knew the moment had come. He rose from his throne, his voice echoing across the gathering. "She has spoken wisdom. She has shown humility. But a queen must also prove her courage. Tomorrow at the feast, Anna will face her final trial. If she endures, I will decide her fate." The drums thundered. The people cheered. But in the shadows, Grace's face twisted into a wicked smile. "Final trial?" she hissed. "Then I will give her one that ends her story forever." That night, in the secrecy of her hut, Grace prepared her darkest plan yet. On the wooden table lay a small clay pot filled with powder. Poison. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, when the feast is served, she will drink, and the world will see her fall. Then the prince will curse her name." Mary shivered. "Mother, this is dangerous. What if they discover the truth?" But Grace snapped, "Silence! Do you want to remain poor all your life, while that orphan takes the crown? Tomorrow the feast will end." Clara sat quietly, her hands trembling. Her heart screamed against her mother's cruelty, but fear sealed her lips. The next day, the feast began. Long tables filled the palace hall, stacked with roasted meat, steaming yam, fruits, and spiced drinks. Musicians played flutes, and dancers moved like flowing water. The people laughed, but Anna's heart was heavy. She knew this trial would be harder than the rest. She sat beside Edward, who held her hand under the table. "Do not fear," he whispered. "Whatever comes, we face it together." At the king's command, servants began pouring cups of palm wine. Grace, disguised among the servants, slipped her poisoned pot into the mix. Her eyes gleamed as she watched a cup placed before Anna. The king raised his hand. Before us sit 2 cups. One is Anna's, one is mine. If she is to be queen, she must drink first, showing courage before all. A hush fell over the hall. All eyes turned to Anna. Grace's heart pounded with dark delight. Yes, drink, little orphan. Your end is here. Edward's grip on her hand tightened. His eyes searched hers, full of fear. Anna, you don't have to... But Anna stood slowly, lifting the cup with steady hands. She looked at the king, then at the people. Her voice trembled but carried strength. If I must prove my courage, then let this cup speak for me. She raised it to her lips. The hall gasped. Grace's smile spread wide. But just before Anna drank, a voice cried out, loud and desperate. Stop! All eyes turned. It was Clara, Grace's own daughter. She pushed through the crowd, her face pale with fear. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Don't drink it. The cup is poisoned. My mother put it there. The hall erupted in shock. The king's eyes blazed with fury. Guards rushed forward, seizing Grace before she could escape. She screamed and struggled, her plans crumbling into dust. Anna froze, her hands shaking, the cup slipping from her grasp and shattering on the floor. Edward pulled her into his arms, his voice fierce. I almost lost you. And the king, his face grave, turned to the guards. Take Grace away. She will answer for this before the law. The hall thundered with voices, some in anger, some in relief. And in the center, Anna stood trembling, her courage proven not by the drink, but by the fact she had faced death without flinching. The palace hall shook with noise after Clara's cry. Guards dragged Grace forward, her wrists bound with rope. She spat and cursed, her eyes burning with hatred. The villagers shouted at her, some in anger, some in disbelief. The king stood tall, his voice heavy with authority. Grace of Katora, you have dared to bring poison into the palace of your king. You sought to destroy the innocent, and you would have shamed this kingdom. What defense do you have? Grace sneered. Defense? That girl is a curse. She has bewitched the prince with her false humility. She was nothing in my house, a beggar I fed. And now you would crown her queen? I only did what any mother would do, protect her daughters from disgrace. Her words cracked like thunder, but the people hissed and jeered. They had seen Anna's truth with their own eyes. Grace's lies could no longer hide her cruelty. Clara stepped forward, trembling, her voice breaking. My king, forgive me for my silence. I watched as my mother plotted against Anna. I was too afraid to speak, but I could not watch her drink death. Anna never stole, never lied, never harmed us, even when we mistreated her. She is not the curse. My mother's hatred is the curse. The crowd fell silent. Some wept, some nodded. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Clara. Despite all the pain, she felt no hatred, only sorrow. The king's face remained stern. For such a crime, death would not be unjust. The hall gasped. Grace's face paled for the first time. But Anna stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. My king, please. Let not hatred end with more hatred. She has wronged me, but I forgive her. If I carry bitterness, I am no better than she is. Spare her life, and let mercy be the lesson remembered here. The crowd erupted in astonishment. Even Edward turned, staring at her in awe. The queen, who had watched quietly all along, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but strong. My king, do you not see? Only a heart like this can guide a kingdom. This girl, with nothing to her name, shows more wisdom and mercy than many nobles in this hall. Edward added firmly, "Father, this is the queen our people need. Not for her beauty, not for her birth, but for her heart." The king looked long at Anna. The fire in his eyes softened. At last, he raised his hand. "Grace shall not die. She will live, but as an outcast, until her heart learns humility." And as for Anna, the hall grew silent. Anna's breath caught. The king continued, "She has passed every trial, not by power, not by wealth, but by wisdom, humility, and mercy. She is worthy. She shall be the bride of my son." The hall thundered with cheers. The villagers stamped their feet. The drums roared, and even the nobles, who once doubted, bowed their heads in respect. Grace fell to her knees, her voice breaking. "Anna, forgive me. I see now the darkness of my heart." Anna stepped closer. Though her body trembled, her voice was steady. "I forgave you long before you asked. May peace find you, even if you never gave it to me." Tears rolled down Clara's cheeks. Mary hid her face in shame. And in the middle of it all, Edward took Anna's hand and whispered, "At last, nothing can stand between us." The air in Katora was alive with music. Drums beat like thunder, flutes sang sweetly, and villagers danced in the square. News had spread far and wide. Prince Edward would marry Anna, the orphan girl who had faced trials and shown mercy where others sought revenge. Anna stood quietly in her small clay hut, watching the celebrations from her window. Her heart trembled. She whispered to herself, "Can it truly be? A girl once scorned, now chosen to wear the crown." Her reflection in the small, cracked mirror did not look like a queen. She saw a girl scarred by hardship, a girl who had once swept floors and carried water. But then Clara entered, her eyes red from weeping. She carried a small, wooden box. "Anna," she said softly, "I know I don't deserve your kindness, but I brought you something. It belonged to my grandmother." She opened the box, revealing delicate beads, red, blue, and gold, woven into a necklace. Clara placed it gently around Anna's neck. "You are the true sister I never valued. Today, let me stand by your side." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She embraced Clara tightly. For the first time, the warmth of sisterhood touched her heart. At the palace, Edward argued with the council of nobles. "She is to be my bride. Let there be no doubt. Yet I hear whispers that some still oppose her." One elder noble replied, "My prince, some fear the people will not respect a queen of humble birth." Edward's voice thundered, "Then let them watch how she wins their hearts. For true royalty is not in wealth or blood, but in character." The queen smiled quietly at her son's words, while the king remained silent, his eyes thoughtful. On the day of preparation, the palace courtyard was transformed. Colorful fabrics waved in the wind, carved drums lined the stage, and women pounded yam as children sang in cheerful voices. The people arrived in crowds, their curiosity as strong as their joy. Anna entered the palace dressed in a simple white gown, sewn by village women. She wore the bead necklace Clara had given her. No crown yet, no jewels, just the glow of humility on her face. When the crowd saw her, there was a hush. Then an old woman in the crowd called out, "May she reign with kindness, for she has suffered as we suffer." Another voice shouted, "Yes, a queen who knows the pain of the poor." Suddenly, The cheers rose like a flood. The people clapped, stamped their feet, and sang praises. Anna's doubts melted away. For the first time, she felt not just chosen, but accepted. That evening, Edward found her in the palace garden, standing under the moonlight. He held her hands and whispered, "Tomorrow, you will no longer be the girl of sorrow. Tomorrow, you will be my queen." Anna smiled faintly, her voice trembling. "I only hope I am strong enough." Edward leaned closer. "You are stronger than any crown, Anna. That is why I love you." The night was filled with drums of celebration, but in Anna's heart there was quiet peace. The sun rose over Katora with golden fire, its rays dancing across the palace walls. The day had come, the wedding of Prince Edward and Anna. Villagers poured into the palace grounds, their drums echoing joy, their voices lifted in songs of praise. Anna walked slowly through the palace halls, dressed in flowing white, her bead necklace shining, her heart pounding like the drums outside. Servants whispered in awe as she passed, not because of her dress, but because of the light of peace on her face. In the grand courtyard, the king sat on his throne, the queen by his side, and Edward stood proudly at the altar, his eyes searching only for Anna. As the ceremony began, the high priest lifted his staff. "Before the spirits of our ancestors, before the eyes of the people, we bless this union of prince and bride." The crowd cheered, but suddenly a voice cut through the air, angry, defiant. "She cannot be queen." Gasps filled the courtyard. A nobleman stepped forward, his robe gleaming, his eyes sharp with scorn. He was Lord Henry, one of the oldest lords of the kingdom, bitter that his own daughter had been overlooked. He pointed at Anna. "She is nothing but a servant's child. If she becomes queen, we bring shame upon our kingdom. I will not allow it." Murmurs swept the crowd. Doubt flickered in some eyes. Anna's body trembled. For a moment, her old fears returned, but Edward stepped forward, his voice like thunder. "Lord Henry, enough! You speak of shame, yet it is shameful to despise a woman of virtue because of her birth. Have you not seen her courage, her mercy, her heart that forgave even her enemies?" The nobleman sneered. "Words mean nothing. If she is truly worthy, let her prove it before us all." The king's eyes narrowed. "And what proof do you demand, Lord Henry?" The nobleman smirked. "Let her speak, here and now, why she believes she is fit to be queen. If her words cannot move us, then let her leave this place." The courtyard fell silent. Anna's hands shook. She had not expected another trial on her wedding day. Edward squeezed her hand gently. "You have nothing to fear. Speak from your heart." Anna stepped forward. She looked at the crowd, not nobles, not kings, but the poor, the widows, the children who watched her with hope in their eyes. She took a deep breath. "I am not here because of our wealth or power," she began, her voice steady. "I was an orphan, despised and rejected. I know the pain of hunger, the sting of cruelty, and the loneliness of being forgotten. But I also know the power of forgiveness, the strength of humility, and the beauty of love. If I am to be queen, it is not to rise above you, but to walk with you, not to rule by pride, but to serve with compassion." Her voice grew stronger. "A true queen is not made by her birth, but by her heart. And my heart belongs to this people, as it belongs to the man I love." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then slowly the crowd erupted in cheers. Villagers clapped, nobles bowed their heads, and even the king's eyes glistened with pride. Lord Henry's face darkened, but he could not speak. The people had chosen. The kingdom had accepted her. The high priest raised his staff once more. Then let no voice of doubt remain. By the will of the king, the blessing of the people, and the strength of love, I declare them husband and wife. The drums roared, the trumpets blared, and Edward lifted Anna's hand high for all to see. Tears of joy streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "At last, I am free." And Edward replied, smiling, "At last, you are my queen." The wedding drums faded into memory, but their echoes remained in every heart. For days, the people of Keturah celebrated, telling and retelling the story of how an orphan girl rose to become their queen. Anna now sat in the royal palace, her crown light upon her head, yet her spirit humble. She had all the wealth she could ever need, yet she still walked among the poor, speaking with widows, holding children, and listening to the cries of those who once had no voice. Prince Edward, now King Edward, after his father stepped aside, walked proudly beside her, ruling not with fear but with justice and compassion. Together, they became a symbol of hope for the kingdom. One quiet evening, as the moon bathed the palace in silver light, a visitor arrived at the gates. It was Grace. Her once proud face was lined with sorrow, her clothes torn, her body weakened by hardship. The guards moved to drive her away, but Anna saw her from the balcony and called out, "Let her come." Grace was brought into the courtyard, where Anna and Edward waited. Falling to her knees, Grace wept bitterly. "Anna, my child, I wronged you. I treated you like dust under my feet. I tried to destroy you, even when you had done me no harm. I see now the weight of my sin. Please forgive me." The crowd that had gathered murmured, watching closely. Anna's eyes filled with tears. She remembered the pain, the hunger, the nights of sorrow. She could have turned her back, but instead she knelt and lifted Grace to her feet. "Stepmother, I forgave you long ago. What you meant for harm shaped me into who I am. Let the past be buried. Let us live in peace." Grace broke down, weeping into Anna's arms. Clara and Mary, who had followed their mother, also fell to their knees. For the first time, the family embraced in unity. The people watching wept with joy. They saw not only a queen who ruled with wisdom, but a woman who showed that forgiveness could heal even the deepest wounds. Edward placed his arm around Anna and spoke to the crowd. "Let this day be remembered, that love is stronger than hatred, mercy greater than pride, and unity more powerful than division." The villagers cheered, stamping their feet, their voices rising to the sky. Children danced, women sang, and the kingdom rejoiced. Years passed, and the story of Anna, the orphan girl who became queen, spread beyond the borders of Keturah. Parents told their children the tale by firelight, teaching them the lessons of humility, courage, and forgiveness. And in every telling, the truth remained clear, that no matter how low one begins, love can lift them higher. That cruelty may wound, but mercy heals. That a family divided by pride can be restored by forgiveness. Anna and Edward reigned in peace, their love unbroken, their kingdom strong. And so the story closed, not with bitterness, but with harmony. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscriber button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching, and stay blessed.